Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder and coach at TEC, and I want to kick this episode off with an all call for coaches, health and fitness professionals, dietitians, nutritionists. If you are in the health and wellness space, and you are frustrated with the growth of your business, if you are struggling to make the money that you want to make, if you're struggling to understand how to attract and retain your ideal client, if you struggle to charge what you feel like you're worth, then I am speaking to you. TEC, the company that I founded, is a business accelerator for people like yourself. Individuals in the health and wellness space that want to grow profitable businesses but are struggling to do so. We have spent the last decade putting together all of the resources that you need to address the specific pain points that individuals in this space face when they are working to grow and scale their businesses. We address that in three primary ways. We look at revenue. How do you make money? This is a primary pain point that individuals in this space, in the coaching industry face, and we address that very tactically and help you put systems in place and develop skills to make the revenue that you want. We also address client acquisition and retention. How do you attract the right client, specifically a client that is willing to pay you what you're worth, recognizes your value and what you bring to their lives, and how do you retain that client? How do you stop the incessant, consistent, constant running around and chasing new clients? This is one of the biggest pain points in our industry, is that we're always trying to fill our rosters. If we can keep the clients we have, we solve that problem. So we teach you how to do that so that you can stop that rat race. We also address support. So the coaching industry is very siloed. We're all trying to keep secrets from each other. For some reason, there is no secret sauce. What is required is support. We want collaboration. We want to work with entrepreneurs and business owners that are excited and fired up to trade ideas, to share information so that we can elevate the industry as a whole. So TEC focuses primarily on providing that network so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to solve these problems for yourself. We put you in relationship with driven, fired up entrepreneurs in this space that you can share ideas with, that you can get mentorship from, and so you can accelerate the growth of your business versus trying to figure it out all on your own. So if any of these three primary pain points sound like things that you have dealt with or are currently dealing with, then I want you to reach out. You can do that at thomasendurancecoaching.com. Click Become a Coach in the top header to get started. You can also reach out to us at enduranceminded.com. We'll put the information in the show notes of this episode. We are looking to work with 100 coaches this year in 2024 to help them grow and accelerate their coaching businesses. We only work with the best of the best. We only work with people that are ready to make a change, that are ready to change the narrative in the coaching industry. And so if this sounds like you, if you feel like you're the right fit, then we want to work with you. We want you to be one of those 100 in 2024. Again, that's thomasendurancecoaching.com. Click the link at the top of the header or check for the link in the show notes. And I look forward to helping you build and scale a wildly profitable coaching business. Let's talk about stress. So I want to talk today specifically about three different areas of stress. And as always, to try to provide some actionable guidance, some insight, some experiences based on those that I've had and conversations I've had with others around stress. And I want to talk specifically about how to recognize signs that you are stressed. That might sound obvious, but sometimes it's not as clear as we think it is or should be. I want to talk about what got you there. So how did you become stressed in the first place? And then I want to talk about how to manage it. Again, manage it based on my experiences, things that I've recognized that work for me in my own life, and recognizing that everyone is different, and everyone's circumstances are different, your scenario, your life, responsibilities, and so on. But hopefully to provide some clarity. I think stress is something that clouds our ability to see things in a way that's in alignment with how we want to move through the world. It is all encompassing sometimes. It is all that we can feel. It's where we make decisions from. And so it's hard, even if, as you listen to this episode, even if your circumstances, your outlook, your viewpoint, your ability to make decisions are not the same exactly as how I described them. My hope is that even recognizing a different viewpoint can help you break out of that stress environment, break out of that stress mindset, which again is so often just all consuming. And it is hard to understand and recognize that there can be other options, and that doesn't have to be our baseline, and that there are ways that we can navigate stressful time periods, stressful situations. The aggregate of those things in our bodies and our minds, and how they show up. So I hope again that this is even though I recognize that I'm coming from a specific set of scenarios and circumstances, and my ability to navigate these things is unique to me, and everyone is going to have their own approach. I hope that just that visibility into some other opportunities and some other pathways will help you step out of that stress environment and recognize that there are ways to navigate it. So let's start by talking about signs that you're stressed. Again, this might seem like it's not something worth mentioning, because it is probably, or on the surface seems obvious, when we are or aren't stressed. But the reason that I want to start here is because what I've recognized is that we often don't realize that we're stressed, because stress is, for so many of us, your new baseline. You operate at such a heightened state. It's such a in such a reactive place of stress that you don't even know that you're stressed. It's just how you move through life, and that manifests in terms of the stress response on our body. So how we feel. We feel anxious, we feel tired, we feel irritable, we feel stressed, right? We feel pressure. It also manifests in just our nervous system. I certainly can speak for myself. When I have had heightened, prolonged periods of stress, my nervous system is fried. I don't think as clearly. I don't sleep. Even when I have moments when I can rest, I can't. And there's this general feeling of just kind of burnout and fatigue that is at a molecular atomic level, and that is that kind of nervous system fry that I think so many of us are dealing with, and we don't even recognize it or give a name to it because it's our new baseline. And so I want to start off by talking, about signs that you're stressed, in case you don't even recognize that that's happening, in case your new baseline is stressed. And again, this comes from so much of this comes from personal experience. I have been here. It is something that I consistently and continually butt up against and have to battle and navigate so that I can enjoy myself, so that I don't have stress as my baseline. And so one of the first signs that you might be stressed is that you're reactive. I've talked about this at length on this show. Reactive versus proactive. And I want you to put yourself in this place of just kind of a general way that you respond and move through the world. And this reactive state is this kind of constant jumping from thing to thing, putting out fires, always feeling behind, never quite feeling like you have a handle on what you should be doing next, what you want to be doing next. You don't have time for the things that you like to be doing. You're always playing makeup. You're a day behind, 2 days behind, 2 weeks behind. you're reactive, right? And you're responsive, and you feel out of control in your general, in the scenarios that generally play out in your life. It's going to be across the board. Typically, the stress will come from one specific area, but it'll manifest in this kind of new baseline across all areas of your life. So it might be coming from work, or it might be coming from home, or certain responsibilities, but that's going to manifest in every area of your life. So it's that reactive state. And if that is going on for too long, meaning that it's not something you can get around, or it becomes, again, a standard operating practice, then I think that is one of the signs that you are stressed and that your baseline is stress. Second one is overcompensation. And as I walk through these, again, I want you to put yourself kind of in this place. This is when I was mapping this out. That's how I got to this place. That's how I began to recognize these signs, both in my own life as well as in experiences and conversations that I've had with others. So I want you to put yourself in these positions. I want you to feel what that might feel like. I want you to think about scenarios in your own life, because I think that's a great place to start. And I think for me, that's how I was able to kind of recognize what this looks and has felt like for me. So overcompensation. I want to give you an example of this. As always, I'm going to pull heavily from the fitness component of life. And so this overcompensation manifests in one particular way. And I'll give you an example. It's that we feel like we have to overdo it, or we have to make up. I'll use quotes around makeup for the things that we haven't made time for, or haven't gotten to do in days past. This manifests and shows up in no more obvious place than workouts, specifically missed workouts. So if we're talking about training, we're talking about consistent exercise. When we are stressed, when we are reactive, one of the things that typically we fall behind on is consistent exercise. And we find ourselves feeling like, I'd like to be able to do more. I wish I could do more. If I could just, if I could do more exercise, if I could get in more frequency of exercise, then maybe I could round the corner. Then maybe I would be able to make up for, again, in air quotes, what I feel like I'm missing out on or not delivering on in this one key section of my life. So with missed workouts, we roll those over, right? I missed yesterday's workout. Let me do yesterday's workout and today's workout. So it's a kind of a hyper fixation on quantity over quality. It's a hyper fixation on doing the work at all cost and not listening to my body, not focusing on the macro, not an inability to zoom out and understand that showing up consistently in a sustainable approach is the only thing that moves us forward. Again, this is very much in alignment with that reactive approach, right? Where I find that when I've been in this position, I'm grasping, right? Everything else feels like it's out of my control. It feels like it's slipping away from me. I feel like I'm not making the progress that I would want or would like to, or had forecasted that I would in certain areas of my life. And so I'm grasping to control this one thing that I feel like maybe I can wrap my hands around. And if I can just do that, then I'll make progress. At least I'll have a win somewhere. And again, it's not that getting a workout in is a bad thing. It's not that, I didn't do it yesterday, maybe I can do it today. That can work, and that's fine. Again, I want you to put yourself in this mindset. There's a general feeling here that I'm trying to paint that I want you to understand if this is where you have been or felt this before. Again, it's this grasping, it's this kind of frantic nature of not being able to control anything. So trying to hyper control other things and being frustrated with where you're at, right? Again, in this particular example, I've seen this show up so many times in the exercise space, is that we're trying to overdo it on the workout front, right? We're rolling sessions that we missed last week. We feel guilty about missing those sessions. Our bodies didn't cooperate. Our minds didn't cooperate. The schedule didn't work out. We missed it. and we roll that into the next week or the next days, and we're constantly feeling behind, feeling like we have to make up. Again, that's the picture that I'm trying to paint. We could forecast that same scenario out in the career front, right? I missed deadlines. I'm behind. I didn't get to my emails. So I'm overcompensating, right? I'm trying to overdo. I'm trying to make up for missed time. When all that does is just compile and compress the already existing stress and make it more heightened. So think about that overcompensation. Put your body and your mind in that place and understand or think about if that resonates, if you've been in that kind of general feeling with any of those particular examples, or again, just that general sentiment forecasted out across any area of your life. Next is for signs that you're stressed is an inability to rest and an overfixation on productivity. So again, general sentiment here. I want to paint a picture. I find that when I am stressed, I have a tremendously hard time resting. Now, for me, sitting on the couch and watching Netflix isn't actually rest, right? So I highlight that because rest is different for different people, and there's nuance there. Rest can mean in taking a break from the thing that is providing stress and engaging in something else, right? Gardening, exercise, go for a bike ride, go for a walk, time with family, go eat out at a restaurant. Whatever that is, rest doesn't mean that we have to go to sleep. But again, using myself as an example, the thing that I find is that when I am stressed, I struggle to rest at all. I struggle to engage in something else, and I become hyper fixated on productivity. So even in that time that I've said is rest, I become fixated on task orientation, right? So for example, okay, I'm going to take a break from work. This particular thing is providing stress. It's a stressful season. And I'm going to take half a day on Saturday and I'm going to work outside in my yard and I'm just going to enjoy that time. What that turns into is a to-do list of things that I feel pressured to check off in order to convince myself that that time was valuable and to convince myself that that was a worthwhile exercise and taking that time actually produced something. And I'm not saying that to-do lists are bad. I'm not saying that even that might not work for some people's brain. But again, I want you to recognize where that's coming from. That practice is not coming from a healthy place. It's coming from a hyperfixation on control. If I can just do these things, at least that's a win, right? If I can check all these things off, if I can get this to-do list done, if I can be productive somewhere, it helps to compensate mentally for where I feel like I'm not being productive because I'm stressed out, right? Because when we are overly stressed, we're also typically not doing our best work. We're not showing up in alignment with who we are, who we want to be. And so this hyperfixation and overcompensation on productivity helps us feel like we got to win, right? It helps us feel like we're doing something right because I'm fucking it up over here and I can't seem to get ahead, right? So again, general sentiment. I want you to put yourself in these positions and recognize where that showed up in your life. All right. So let's talk about what got you there, right? So signs of stress, reactive overcompensation, inability to rest, and kind of hyperfixation on productivity. If you're in those positions, there's a lot of other ways. There's a lot of other signs of stress, certainly. But those three are the ones that certainly I feel like have been most prevalent in the people that I work with and most prevalent in my own life as well. So what got you there? Now that we recognize that you're stressed, let's pull back and let's think about what got us there so that we can be proactive versus reactive. So first is you probably said yes to the wrong things. So when we say yes to the wrong things, we're saying no to the right things. This is a mantra and just a saying that I love to repeat because I can't overstress how important it is to get comfortable saying no. No is a complete sentence. It doesn't need to be elaborated on. It doesn't need to be contextualized. No, right? And make sure that you know what you should be saying no to. So let me say that again. When you say yes to the wrong things, you're saying no to the right things because you've now just taken up bandwidth. You've taken up your time. You've committed, which means that there is now one less opportunity for the right thing to insert itself into your life. So it is very, very critical that we start to build a habit of aligning with the right things as much as we can control. There is always bullshit that we're going to have to navigate. I recognize that even in my own life, you can't curate the perfect day. There's things we have to do. But as much as we can control them, let's say yes to the right things. And across the board, when I talk to people that are stressed, there are things that they are doing that they should have said no to, and that they had the ability to say no to, but they didn't because they felt pressure. They didn't recognize that it was the wrong thing. They didn't have the communication skills to navigate that, right? They don't know how to advocate for themselves. They don't feel like they have autonomy in the space they're operating in. There's a lot of different reasons, but there are things that you can say no to that you've said yes to and that are stressing you out. So that's one of the things that gets us there. Next is focusing on things that you can't control. Another saying that I love, and I don't know where I heard this, but I repeat it in my mind all the time, is that the biggest challenges in my life never happened. All right, let me say that again. The biggest challenges in my life never happened. What does that mean? It means that they're in my mind. It means that I've fixated on things that I have no control over, and I've fabricated potential experiences that actually never played out. How many of you have done that? Everyone. I don't know anyone that hasn't suffered from this condition. Now, some of us deal with it more than others. But if you can get to a place where you can work to focus on the things you can control and relinquish the things that you can't, the level of stress that will come down or be removed from your life is astounding. Because so much of the stress that we feel, we've created in our own minds. We play out a million different scenarios. How's this conversation going to go? How's this person going to respond? What's going to happen if I do this? What's going to happen if I don't do this? Right? And we play that and we replay it and we play it at night and we lose sleep and it never happens. It's a fabrication. Now I recognize that this is the human condition. And if I could solve it completely, I would, because nobody is more guilty of this than I am. But you can work this muscle. You can tell yourself and focus your energy on things that you can control, right? For instance, all I can control is how I show up. I can't control anybody else's response. Now, the response might be the thing that keeps me up at night. But if I can develop the muscle that says, all I need to do is continue to hone my skills and continue to develop myself so that I'm 100% confident in how I show up, I can relinquish people's response to whatever scenario plays out. Let's talk about it on the exercise front. What's going to happen on this race? Am I going to be ready for this event? Will I ever be good at riding a bike? Will I be good at running? Will I get faster? Who knows? All you can control is how you show up today. I don't know what's going to happen next year. I don't know if I'll get stronger. I don't know if I'll get faster. I don't know if I'll lose weight. But what I do know is I can control exactly how I show up today. I can focus on who I want to be, how I want to show up, how I want to create that time, how I want to fuel my body, and I'm going to try to do the same thing tomorrow. And the next day, and the next day, and before you know it, years will have passed and you will have reached your goals. I don't give any thought to my level of fitness 6 months from now or a year from now. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Now, it doesn't mean that I've absolved myself of goals. It doesn't mean that I'm not reaching and striving, but all I can do is today. All I can do is recognize the runway and the path required to get me to my goals, and I focus on what I need to do right now. Spending any energy Imagining and forecasting potential scenarios for where I'll be 6 months from now is a fool's errand. Again, I can visualize that. I can set clear goals. But then I come back to today, step by step. That's all I can do. I can't get to 6 months from now any faster than I'm going right now, right? 24 hours a day. That's all we have. So focus on what we can control. Don't waste energy stressing about the things that are out of our control. Focus on what you have. If we want to boil that down, that's process. All we can control is the process. So if you're finding yourself stressed, I would almost guarantee that one of the things that got you there is worrying about things you can't control. So let's try to come back from that. Again, I recognize that it's hard, but we can work that muscle. Next, what got you there? You're pouring from an empty cup. This is something I've talked about a lot on this show. It's something I believe in. It's something that I have royally screwed up in my own life in the past. And you can't pour from an empty cup. If you are stressed, take an audit and think about, be honest, if you are giving to yourself what's required for the output that you're expecting of yourself. Right? You can't do it. Every single time that I am stressed, I've even unknowingly, and this is something I talk about every single day, and truthfully, I've gotten really damn good at it. I don't miss a lot of workouts. I don't sacrifice sleep very much. I know how important it is to refill my cup and take care of myself. And even though I know how important it is, every time I'm stressed, if I take an audit, I've fallen off. I've missed a workout. I scheduled a meeting when I typically work out. I started working an hour early because I was trying to overcompensate versus stretching and reading and planning and doing deep work. I, lo and behold, working through the weekend instead of refilling my cup with time with my family and friends and being outside and doing other things I like. It's a slow burn. It creeps up on me, and I know exactly how it's supposed to go down, and I still screw it up. So if you're stressed, take an audit. Are you pouring from an empty cup? What does that look like, right? Consistent movement. You need some rest. Again, doesn't mean that you have to sleep, but you have to recharge. Spend time with community, right? There is a massive mounting body of work that highlights the importance of spending time with people that you care about, community. It doesn't have to be a massive group, but find your people and make time for them. So if those things are not being checked, or you're sacrificing them in some way, come back to those things, right? Don't skip your workouts. Don't skip your walk with your dog or your family or your kids. Don't skip breakfast with a friend. Don't skip trying to get decent sleep. Don't skip drinking water, right? Don't skip good food that fuels your body. These are things that it's the only way that allows you to come back into the world and to deliver in alignment with your expectations, right? You're burning the candle at both ends. Of course, that's going to make you feel stressed. You don't have it to give. The cup's empty. So you're pouring from nothing. So what got you there? Again, you said yes to the wrong things. You're focused on things you can't control, and you're pouring from an empty cup. Again, there's a million ways to get to stressed environment or to a stressed feeling. But those three I've seen every time in my own life, every time I talk to other people, athletes, business owners, entrepreneurs, those three are always present. So understand what it could look like to take a different approach and to start to write some of those things so that we can be proactive versus reactive. Now, how to manage it. So we talked about recognizing the signs that you're stressed, what got you there. Now, let's assume that we didn't get ahead of it because it still happens, right? I can have all the tools in the world and it sneaks up on us. Life is hard. Things are stressful, especially if you're someone who sets big goals. When you stretch yourself outside of your comfort zone, there's an inherent amount of stress that you will have to cope with, because you have no idea what the hell is on the other side of that. And that's a scary thing. And that is a stress, will elicit some stress for sure. However, again, we can try to recognize it. We can try to manage it, given the tools that we have, given what's at our disposal. And then let's talk about how to manage it. So identify your non-negotiables. Again, I'm pulling from some themes here that we've talked about at length on this show. So if you're new to the show, you can go back in previous episodes. We have some episodes specifically around non-negotiables. What those are is the things you're willing to fight for. That's how I describe them, right? And I think it's 3 to 5 things. It's not a laundry list. It's a short list of things that you are willing to fight for to make happen every single day, right? Exercise. That's one of mine. I think a consistent movement practice. I've talked about this a lot. I'm not advocating that everybody needs to be an ultra distance athlete. I am advocating that you need to move consistently so that you feel your best. Exercise in some form or fashion is important for your mental health, for your physical health, your emotional health. So consistent movement. Sleep, right? I need to rest, right? I'm listing mine. And I need to prioritize that, which means I also need to set my calendar up so that I can prioritize that. I want to fuel my body. Specifically, I want to cook meals with people that I care about. I want to combine fueling my body with community. So I want to cook meals with my family, with friends. Again, that means I need to set my calendar up for success. That means I can't start cooking dinner at 9 o'clock if I need to go to bed and get enough sleep. So again, we're starting to prioritize things. This is the power of non-negotiables, is it helps you get laser focused on how you should move through the day. They become your bookends and your benchmarks of your day. If I want to get exercise in every day, where does it come from? I got to schedule it in. I got to make that time. So identify your non-negotiables. Again, 3 to 5 things that you're willing to fight for, that you're willing to prioritize, and you're willing to really, really push back on everything else trying to encroach and take those things from you. If you allow it, everything else will come in, right? Everything else will start to creep, and slowly but surely those non-negotiables and the time you've dedicated to them will be eroded, and you won't have that time anymore. That will create a stressful environment. 100%, every time. Look at your calendar. Do a time audit. So again, how do we manage stress? This goes back to, are you saying yes to the wrong things? I've said this before, if you show me your calendar, I'll show you what you prioritize. I'll show you what you value. Where do you spend your time? It's just as simple as that. Where you spend your time is the outward expression of what you value and what you've prioritized. Now, we could say all day long, no, Taylor, I prioritize, one of my non-negotiables is health and sleep and time with my family and X, Y, and Z. Is it on your calendar? Are you doing it? If you're not, then you don't prioritize it. I've seen it myself so many times. That is a fact. I could say, these are the things I care about. Where am I putting my time and energy? That's what we really care about. That's the final manifestation of that. So your calendar and your output of time needs to reflect what you prioritize. If it's not, that's going to cause stress, because you're going to recognize that it's not in alignment with your priorities. It's going to make you frustrated, and you're going to be stressed about that. No better example of this than exercise. I won't get into that, but anyone who has struggled with consistency in exercise, you spend an inordinate amount of time being stressed about the fact that you're not consistent when what you would like to be doing is being consistent. Round and round, negative feedback loop, and you never get anywhere. It's got to be, it's got to be how you spend your time. Next is to focus on what you can control. We talked about this before, but I want to reiterate it. One of the best ways to manage stress is to recognize how you show up in stress, right? What creates stress? Things that are out of our control, things that I can't wrap my hands around, things that I don't feel like I have any control over, that I can't control my response to. Zoom in. What can I control? right? I can control how I show up. I can control my attitude. I can control how I communicate. I can control how I allocate my time. I can control how I allocate my time in the direction of my priorities and the things that I value. I can control who I'm around, who pours back into me, who I let into my circle, who I let influence me. I can control the types of information I consume, right? This is a whole nother one. Stress comes from all the stuff we see on the internet, right? Are you taking in content that's making you stressed? I'm not living up. I'm not making enough money. I'm not fit enough. I'm not fast enough. The list goes on, right? We see these quote unquote perfect examples of all these things. That's fabricated. And even if it's real, it doesn't matter. We can't control that. I don't have any control over that person's life. I can control how I show up and how I move in the direction of my goals. So if you're stressed, one of the best and quickest ways, not the easiest way, but the quickest way to manage that stress is to focus on what you can control. Right? And you can start with any number of the things that I just listed off. There's a lot of things that are in our control. We tend to focus on a few things that are out of our control, and they have an inverse response or carry an inverse amount of weight to our ability to change them. Right? Meaning that there's a handful of things there's a lot of things that are out of control, but in particular scenarios, we fixate on one or two things, and we have 20 things that are in our control that we can actually move the needle on, right? So we spend an inordinate amount of time on the couple of things we can't control and not enough time on the things that we can. And then lastly, choose the energy that you bring. I don't want to sound overly fluffy here, meaning, I'm not talking about your energy or your aura or your whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's something you connect to, that's great. What I'm talking about is you can choose how you respond. Right? I had a scenario play out the other day. I was super stressed. This thing that just couldn't quite turn the corner on, and some communication breakdown issues, and the list goes on. And I just landed on the fact that I just refuse to let this thing bog me down. I refuse to spend any more time and energy wondering if this is going to play out how I expected. I identified what I could control. I focused on my strengths. I highlighted the autonomy that I had in that space. I highlighted where I couldn't control anything. I got really clear on what that was, and I just decided that I was done being frustrated over it. It didn't do any good. So I just changed the energy that I brought to that scenario. I could have continued to be mad about it forever and always. I could have let it bog me down. Super frustrating. There wasn't really a resolution. There's no end in sight. And I could have kept at it. To what end? Right? Let's move on. I got other shit I want to do. I'm not willing to let it bog me down anymore. And I think that is something that we let things fester when we could pivot, right? I can keep being mad. I can keep being stressed. I can keep being frustrated. I can keep replaying these potential scenarios in my mind, or I can just not do that. I can decide to show up differently. I can decide to behave in a different way. I can decide to not let this thing bog me down. And I think that there's a lot of power in just that energy that we bring to these scenarios and how much power we let these things have over us. And so I think one of the ways that we can manage it is we decide how we let it manifest in our lives. We decide how much control we let it have over us. And then we move on. Focus on something else because it doesn't do any good. Right? Again, stress there's no positive end to it, right? When we're talking about stress in this particular instance through this particular lens, there's not a light at the end of the tunnel version of that where it all of a sudden becomes productive. It doesn't. It just keeps on. It just keeps bogging us down. It keeps being the thing that keeps us from our goals. So when we talk about stress specifically through this lens, then the answer is to get rid of it, right? To pivot, to recognize what can I do that gets me around this, right? That allows me to get on the other side of this. Because there's no version of this type of stress that actually ends up being productive. It just weighs us down. Maybe we get on with it, but it takes its toll in the meantime. So the faster we can pivot, the better and the less impact it has. So, quick recap. Stress. Talked about signs that you're stressed. So how do we recognize that we're stressed? Again, stress has become our new baseline. So we don't even know, right? What we're responding to is like extreme levels of stress versus what used to be moderate levels of stress. Now we just live in that space. So signs that you're stressed: you're being reactive, you're scrambling, putting out fires, you're overcompensating, you're trying to grasp at straws. I gave the workout example, right? We're rolling missed workouts and we're trying to scramble, and because we feel like if we could just make up, if we could just get ahead, if we could just, right? If you're in that headspace, that's not productive. Inability to rest, over fixation on productivity, right? There's nothing wrong with getting things done, but you have to allow yourself to rest. You have to allow yourself to actually be in that space, to do something else for the sake of doing it and not hyper fixating on productivity so that it gives you something to control. Next is what got you there. So recognized the signs that you're stressed. What got you there? If we highlight that, maybe we can pivot ahead of time. Maybe we can be proactive versus reactive. So you're saying yes to the wrong things. Again, if you say yes to the wrong thing, you said no to the right thing. I love that as just a general statement in life. I say it all the time. And I really, really, really try to control and be strong and confident in what I say no to. It's one of my favorite things to do as I get more confident in that space. No, I love it. Focusing on things you can't control. Again, the biggest challenges in my life never happened. We fabricate them. They're in our heads. We map out all these different scenarios that never actually play out. And our mind doesn't know that. Our mind thinks they're real. So it creates stress. Pouring from an empty cup. If you are stressed, something has taken a hit. I've never seen it not be the case. If this is happening, and you're like, no, I'm checking all the boxes. I'm not pouring from an empty cup. I'm taking time for myself, for my family. I'm focused on my non-negotiables. My cup is full and I'm still super stressed. Let me know. Seriously, I would love to understand what that looks like from someone who is truly chronically stressed and their cup is full. Not to say you won't have moments of stress, but again, chronically stressed. Third is how to manage it. So we talked about signs you're stressed. We talked about what got you there. Now, how do you manage it? It happens. Again, life's hard. Things are hard to manage. People are hard to manage. Our bodies are complex, physical, emotional, mental. There's a lot that goes on. Stress will happen. I am not advocating that we're going to sidestep it completely. I'm advocating that we can pivot faster and spend less time in that stress space and recognize what we need to do to get around it and come back to center in a way that is not at a heightened level of stress. So how can we manage it? Identify your non-negotiables. What are you willing to fight for? If you don't know what these are, take out a piece of paper and think about it and write them down. Then once you have that, number 2, do a calendar and time on it. Are your non-negotiables in your calendar? Are they reflected in how you're giving your time? Maybe not every day, but certainly every week. Some of these are daily. Some of these could be weekly. Are your non-negotiables reflected consistently in how you spend your time? If not, they're not your non-negotiables. Or let me back up. Let me say that differently. If they're not reflected in your calendar, you're not prioritizing them. You can certainly have these non-negotiables, but your time and how you're using it says that you don't value them enough to prioritize them. Focus on what you can control. Again, all we can control is how we show up today. It doesn't do me any good to be stressed out for what could or couldn't happen 6 months or a year from now. Next week, tomorrow, I can control today. and I can control how I show up, the action I take, and the direction of the things I care about. And I'm going to rinse and repeat for the rest of my life, right? It is not sexy. There's no magic pill. There's no cool shortcut. It's never been there. Look at the things that have moved in your life. It's because you just kept showing up. You do the same thing every day, rinse and repeat. All you can control is today. And it doesn't matter, right? Set goals. Set massive goals. Set goals that scare the shit out of you, and then back up and control today. Control how you show up today in the direction of those goals. And take ownership over that, and then wake up tomorrow and do the same thing. And don't spend any time stressing about what could or couldn't, may or may not happen in the direction of that goal down the road. Choose the energy that you bring. Just decide to not care about it anymore, right? Decide how you're going to show up. Yeah, I can be stressed. Yeah, I can keep replaying this a million times in my head. Yeah, I can lose sleep over it. Yes, I've done that though. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to bring a different energy. I'm going to respond a different way. I'm going to react a different way. And I'm not going to let it bog me down. Right? And I don't want to oversimplify how hard that is and the role that stress plays. But again, we have control over that. I can spend time and energy, mental bandwidth being stressed about this, or I can shift. I can do something else. I can pour my energy into something that gives back to me that's not stressful. I can go work out. I can go for a walk. I can do something that I can control versus replaying this time and time again. I know we don't get to side skirt and sidestep all of our responsibilities and things that are stressful. So sometimes we have to lean in. But again, we can't control how we show up. We can control what we can control. And so even if we're in a season where like, you know what, I just got to get this done. This is a responsibility of mine. It's super stressful. We still have autonomy in that space. We can still control the energy that we bring to that. And that makes a massive difference. Doesn't mean that we get to throw our hands up and say, screw it, but we can certainly control how we show up in that space. So I hope this was helpful. As always, I want to be a resource. This comes from so much of my personal journey and struggle and experiences. I've spent an ungodly amount of time being way too stressed. It's taken a toll on my body. It's taken a toll on my mind, my relationships. It's not worth it. And it's worth it to try to live and move through the world in a way that is not that. So thank you so much. I appreciate all of our audience, our amazing endurance-minded community. If you've yet to do so, like, follow, and share. Like Endurance Minded, subscribe, follow us on social media, send your favorite episode to a friend. It means the world to us. That's the lifeblood of podcasts. So if you've yet to do any of the actions, rating us, subscribing, sending an episode to a friend, I would appreciate it greatly if you do that. And thank you so much. I'll see you next time on Endurance Minded.